Big news, everyone. The Society of Massage Archives is officially a 501c3 nonprofit. Greetings. I am Kirby Clark Ellis, president of the Society of Massage Archives. This is a huge milestone, not just for us at SOMA, but for the entire massage therapy community. SOMA is dedicated to preserving and sharing the rich history of our profession, from rare documents and forgotten pioneers to the stories that have shaped this vital practice. We are making sure that our past is never lost. And now, as an official nonprofit, your support of the Society of Massage Archives means more than ever. Your donations are tax deductible, helping us to collect, digitize, and share the untold stories of massage therapy. Want to be a part of history? Here's how you can help. Become a founding supporter. Join our Founders Campaign and be recognized as one of the first 50 donors who made SOMA possible. Or become a recurring contributor when you pledge $20 or more to help us build and sustain this initiative for generations to come. Finally, you can help us out a great deal by spreading the word. Share this video and encourage others to preserve massage history. Your support ensures that future generations of therapists know where we came from and where we're going. Join the Founders Campaign today at societyofmassagearchives.org and make history with us. The past is in our hands. Let's preserve it, one story at a time.
The Society of Massage Archives wishes to congratulate Dr. Patricia Benjamin on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of her book, The Emergence of the Massage Therapy Profession in North America, A History in Archetypes. To honor this milestone, SOMA is launching the Adopt a Box campaign, a last chance to rescue and distribute the physical copies of this essential text before they disappear. You can help get a box of books into massage schools, libraries, practitioners, and educators' hands. And starting soon, join us for the SOMA Book Club, a monthly conversation where we'll read The Emergence and reflect on the stories, struggles, and triumphs that shaped our profession. Help us preserve massage history and carry it forward.
Views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Society of Massage Archives. These interviews and commentaries represent the recollections of both the hosts and the guests, and as such, are subject to the occasional slight inaccuracies. The content here is for informational and educational purposes only. You should conduct your own historical research when determining the veracity of any of the statements made within.
Greetings, and welcome to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives, where we delve into the rich tapestry of massage therapy's past, explore its evolution, and share the stories that have shaped this vital practice. Today is Monday, July 14th, 2025. I am your host, Kirby Clark Ellis, and I'm joined today with Laura Allen. Laura Allen is the president of sales and marketing at CryoDerm, a family-owned company located in Margate, Florida, that makes plant-based pain relief and therapeutic massage products. She is also on the team of CryoDerm Educators. A graduate of Shaw University and the Whole You School of Massage Therapy, Allen began her studies of bodywork in 1993 and has been a licensed massage therapist since 1999. From 1998 to 2003, she was the administrator and an instructor at the Whole You. From 2003 to 2016, she owned a multi-disciplinary clinic offering chiropractic, massage therapy, acupuncture, esthetics, naturopathy, and nutritional counseling. Allen has been an approved provider of continuing education under the NCBTMB since 2002, offering classes in professional ethics, research literacy, business and marketing, massage therapy techniques, and training for those who want to be instructors of massage therapy. She has taught classes all over the United States, in Canada, and Europe. She lives in Western North Carolina with her husband James and their 2 rescue dogs. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you for having me, Kirby. Good to see you.
Likewise, it's awesome to get to connect with you again because we've had interactions outside of the podcast, and really honored to have you join us here. I know this is going to be an incredible conversation, and I know I'm going to learn a ton about you through it too.
Maybe more than you want to know.
I doubt that. But take me back to the beginning for you, Laura. How did you find your way to massage therapy?
Well, in my former life, I was the owner of restaurants for over 20 years. And my previous husband, who's deceased now, he was partners with some people who made wooden toys. They were called Real Toys. The other owner of that is deceased now, but they made beautiful toys. And I mean, they had a show about the company's toys featured on public television one time, and they were just beautiful. But the wife of the man that he was in business with was in the restaurant one day, and in my restaurant one day, and she said, how about going with me to a class down at the community college? It's in Healing Touch, and you have to take a partner, and I'll pay if you'll go. And I sort of went, what in the world is Healing Touch? But I went, and that was my first class in 1993. We did not have licensing in North Carolina back then, and Healing Touch, you don't have to be licensed to. Well, you didn't then. I'm not sure if that's covered under licensing or now not. Some energy work is not. But anyway, that was my first introduction to it. And so then I started taking a few more classes here and there. The lady who ultimately owned the massage school that I attended, she was actually the first massage therapist here in our county between Charlotte and Asheville, which are both larger towns and probably, I don't know, 120 miles away from each other. She was the only therapist in between those two cities. She had gone to Edgar Case, I believe, up in Virginia to learn massage. And when she came back and opened a practice, she got so very busy that she started training people to help her. And there still was no licensing here then. So she started out with a 50-hour course and then moved it to 100 hours and up and up and up until eventually, by the time licensing came into the state, her school was 525 hours. So she used to eat in my restaurant all the time. And I had warned my business partner when we opened our last restaurant. I had 4 restaurants over that 20-year period. And when we opened the last one in 1993, I said, in 5 years, you'd better be prepared to buy me out or I'm just walking out the door. And she said, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know, but it will not involve standing on my feet for 100 hours anymore. So when year number 4 rolled around, I started reminding her that I was going to get out. And the day that I sold out to her, the owner of the massage school happened to be in my place eating lunch. And her school was only about 2 hours away from my house. So if I won the lotto tomorrow, I would still work because I just can't sit around, you know. So I walked out there and I said, how about giving me a job? I can type, I can file, I can sweep the floor. And she went, really? She said, where am I going to eat? And I told her the big fat lie that I would cook for her if she gave me a job.
Oh,
So I took 2 weeks off in between leaving the restaurant and going to work for her. And she told me that she was in need of an administrator for her school. So I started doing that. And she also had a weekend program for people that worked. And the second or third day I was out there, I decided I was going to do that. So I did. I worked for her during the week and went to class on the weekends, and the rest is history. It's been 25. I've been licensed now for 25 years. The owner of that school was actually on our first licensing board.
mm.
And seeing as how I was more or less her head flunky at the time, I was involved in the process of helping her put together documents for licensing and that kind of thing. So been involved in it for a good while now.
Yeah, of course. Well, and it sounds like right from the beginning of at least when North Carolina started actually regulating the profession.
Yes.
I'm wondering, Laura, can you tell me more about Healing Touch? It sounds like that workshop in 93 was really your first foray into any sort of somatic practice.
It was, and that took place down at our local community college, which is way, way bigger now than it was back then. I cannot remember the name of the lady who taught that class. I'm pretty certain that she is still around
Oh.
and still teaching that. But I had no idea what it was about whenever I went to it. And I had, other than being the family massage therapist, you know, rubbing my mother's feet or something like that, I had never done any kind of body work or massage therapy. When we got to the class, they did not have any massage tables for the class or anything. Everybody just laid down on a classroom table. And it started out, you know, with you putting your hands above people and seeing if you could feel their energy field and that type of thing. And of course, you know, you're going to feel heat off of the body. If you're within a couple of inches of someone's body, you're going to feel the temperature coming off of that. So I can't say honestly that I remember all the steps to that because I ultimately, went toward the hands-on direction of things instead of that. But it was my first introduction, and that gave me the urge to learn more about massage. And the school that I went to was very heavy on energy work, which I practiced for a long time along with massage. I will still lay hands on somebody. I just no longer need a theory that violates the physical principles of the universe to go along with that. So it was a good introduction to working with people in an intimate setting, which is what we do. Every day we're in a room alone with someone, and I do believe that their energy affects us and our energy affects them. So I'm on the fence anymore with a lot of things. So,
Yeah, I want to know. It sounds like you had at least some sort of informal concept of touch as the designated, maybe unofficial toucher of your family. Were there others in your family that had set the example of touch or the example of caregiving for you? And do you feel that helped, like any sort of hesitation you had to accept that invitation to the workshop?
no, not I can't recall any of that before I started. I mean, there was no other therapist or anything in my family. I ended up though after I got started. I used to pay my nephew, who's now in his 40s, and he was probably 3 or 4 years old at the time. I used to give him $1 to rub my feet, and he was good at it too. I will tell you a story though. My grandmother, my mother's mother, she lived to be 94 years old. And while I was in massage school, right at the end of her life, she was bedridden. She, could get up for brief periods of time every day, but I was not yet a massage therapist. And right after I started the school, when I got started, had to do 75 massages outside of the school clinic. And so I got one of the students there to come over and massage my grandmother. And, although she was physically frail, she never lost a brain cell. She had every brain cell in her head when she passed. And so I just told her one day, I said, Granny, I said, I've got a girl coming over from the school who's going to massage you later on. And she said, what's that? Well, then it got to the point where she would say, is that girl coming today? Because she really truly enjoyed it, and of course then I began to massage her some myself and got to massage her a little bit myself before she passed. But yeah, that became something that she really looked forward to. And my mother has been a consumer of massage way before I got into it. I woke up one morning and I literally could not move my head. I woke up with most terrible crick in my neck. And what do you do when you're in trouble? You call your mother. So so I called my mom, and I'm going, Mama, I can't move my head. And she said, don't panic, I'll take you to get a massage. So she had to come and pick me up because I literally could not have turned my head to see if traffic was oncoming.
Mm.
And the person she ended up taking me to for massage was ultimately the owner of the massage school that I attended. She didn't have the massage school back then, but I think maybe she had started teaching her 50-hour classes or something back then. So my mom was getting massage, 40 something years ago. And I don't massage my mother. I'll pay somebody to massage my mother. um, but that's that, I've been around it now for a long, long time, and I've been a consumer of it for a long, long time. And I never go more than a few weeks without getting a massage myself. That's part of my regular self care.
Excellent. Let me ask you just to touch on this briefly. Do you feel there is any sort of connection or areas where your past life as a restaurant owner has helped or shown up in your career as a massage therapist?
Well, absolutely. And that started out, 2 or 3 days after I went to work at the massage school. The owner said, oh, yay, you can teach marketing. And my college degree is in psychology, not in marketing. Anyway, I looked at her and I said, I've never taken a marketing class in my life. And she said, but you have had a very successful service-based business for more than 20 years. And she said, this is a service and it's all about giving good service. So I actually did teach marketing, business and marketing to my own class back in massage school. And that would not be allowed nowadays. The board wouldn't allow that. You have to have been licensed for, I forget what it is now. I think to be a teaching assistant, you have to be licensed for 1 year. And then to be a teacher, you have to be licensed for 2. But yeah, it did carry over. And it was also one of the things where you're dealing with public all the time. And, you know, we get all kinds of people on our massage table the same as I got all kinds of people in my restaurant. Some were really nice. Some were not so nice. And, you know, people who are going through everything. I mean, some people come in and they're happy to be there. Some people come in and they're not. You know, some people I think that receive gift certificates really don't want to use those, but they feel compelled to because somebody gave it to them, and maybe they're just someone who doesn't want to be touched. So, yeah, I think my two careers have had some overlap because they're both something where you're dealing with the public all the time. Difference is in the restaurant, there's likely to be a crowd of people around. In the treatment room, it's just you and them. So.
I'm wondering, Laura, also, I kind of get this sense that these restaurants formed, well, and this isn't unique, of course, but as some sort of community because the owner of the massage school was a frequenter of your restaurants, it sounds like. And it kind of sounds like the restaurants were kind of like this hub of community. Would that be a stretch?
My restaurant actually was the hub of the community. I live out in the country in a place that is not a town. It's not a township or anything like that. It's just a rural area. And I took my husband for a ride the other day out through the country. Now, the place that we live is called Gilkey, North Carolina. And you know, we went out a bunch of country roads, and then occasionally we'd run into one of those signs that said, Welcome to Gilkey, out in the middle of nowhere. And he said, God, I didn't realize Gilkey was so big. So, area wise, it's way spread out. But, you know, we don't have anything here. We used to have a service station. We no longer have that. We have, I don't know how many churches. I mean, we were talking about that yesterday. There's probably at least 400 churches in this county, and it's actually one of the more rural counties in North Carolina. So people are religious here. But yeah, when I opened the restaurant, this was so funny. When I opened that restaurant, it was the third one that I had. And then I ended up, after a couple of years, outgrowing the building that we were in and moved to another location, but still a bigger location, but still within the same community. And I'll tell you how it became part of the community. 10 days after we opened the restaurant, we had the biggest blizzard that had taken place here in at least 100 years. There were 16-foot snowdrifts on the ground, and the entire place ran on gas. We actually had a storage room downstairs that had a set of bunk beds in it. So when the blizzard started, my sister-in-law, who was my business partner, she said, You want to go over to the cafe and spend the night? And I said, Yeah, let's do it. So we went over there and camped out in the bunk beds. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, we heard this huge crash, and it was a big tree falling across the road. And we looked at each other and went, Let's go make coffee, because we knew that the power crew was going to be on the scene pretty quick. So we made coffee, and for the next 10 days, without any electricity, we kept that restaurant open. I called and got a porch on. We had water hauled in, and both had power at our house. So one night she took up all the pots and pans home and washed them, and the next night I took all the pots and pans home and washed them. And we sold the heck out of some food. And the second day of the blizzard, I just put a sign up outside that said, Today's menu, take it or leave it. But
Right.
I started selling soup by the gallons. You know, that established us as the community place to be. and it happened very quickly. I think the first day that we opened the restaurant, I think our sales were something ridiculous like $40. And by the end of that 10 days, when the blizzard had obliterated everything, shut everything down in Western North Carolina, by the end of that 10 days, we were doing 10, 15 times that every day, so it was the place where people gathered, and it continued on. We served mainly blue collar people. Logging is a big industry here. We had loggers, we had construction workers, we had a lot of folks. And then there actually is a very high end resort that's about 15 miles away from the restaurant. And we actually ended up getting a lot of clientele from that too. So it was fun. I enjoyed being in the restaurant business for a lot of years. The day I thought it wasn't fun anymore was the day that I decided that I was going to get out of that and get into something else. And it's the same thing with the massage profession. The day it's not fun anymore will be the day I leave.
Sounds like a good plan to me.
Yeah.
Laura, let me ask you, there were some rich pieces in that answer that I just want to explore a little bit. First of all, you mentioned a lot of churches, very religious community, a southern town, which I'm in, and blue collar. Those are the three pieces I kind of want to just quickly touch on. Sometimes, me being here in Arkansas, another southern area, sometimes whenever that touch, and especially touch that's maybe based in more healing or energy techniques, when those brush up against blue collar workers or the religious, do you find that that's hard to really make that connection and establish trust through religious and blue collar communities?
Well, that is true. And I'll tell you something. The school that I attended, part of the required curriculum was Reiki, polarity, traditional Chinese medicine, touch for health, which is all about muscle testing and all that. I'm sure there were a few more that I can't even remember anymore, but it was heavily focused on energy work. And one of the when a couple of students wanted to apply to the school, as it turned out, they were Jehovah Witnesses, and the elders of the church came up to the school and observed a Reiki class to make the judgment call on whether or not it was okay for them to come. And they decided that it was. So the owner also hosted a lot of continuing education classes there. And we had this class one time in holotropic breath work. And so everyone was lying on a pallet on the floor. And everyone who was lying down had a sitter sitting with them who was coaching them about how to breathe. And I was not participating in that class. My desk, as the administrator, my desk was right inside the door of the massage school, and I greeted people coming in. And the telephone man came in up there to do something to the phone line or whatever. Anyway, when he walked in, and everyone's laying in the floor going, and he looked at me and went, "Is this some kind of a cult?" So, we had students from all walks of life that came to that school. People of different religions, people of different races, and different ethnicities and all that kind of stuff. And we also had clients. They had a student clinic there that was open on Saturdays and that kind of thing. Occasionally other days they would announce that in the newspaper, on the website or something, whenever we were having a student day. And people from everywhere came. I mean, you could get back then, I think a student massage was like $20 or something like that. And we had the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, and the pastor of the church, and different, all different people. So I think it was accepted, and I think it was accepted as much back then, even in my small community. There are more massage therapists here now than you can shake a stick at. And I think when I got my license, a lot of the people who came to the massage school that I attended and that I worked at were actually from out of town, because there was not a massage school near them. And, they came from near and far. And especially on that weekend program, we had people that came from other states. We had people that came from Tennessee and people that came from Georgia and South Carolina. because they were working people and it suited them to be able to attend that class on the weekend in the hopes of starting a new career. Back when I graduated from massage school and became licensed, I could probably count on both hands the number of massage therapists that were in this county. And out of the 100 counties in North Carolina, this is the largest one area wise that I live in. Certainly not the largest one population wise, but the largest one area wise. And now there are probably, I couldn't even say, I would think there are at least 50 or 60 massage therapists in our county now. So apparently, there's a demand and they're meeting that demand. So
I imagine it's been interesting to see that growth and perhaps that mind shift change in the general populace where you're at.
yes, it has. And, North Carolina is kind of known as a snowbird state. A lot of people from up north who go to, or maybe were formerly going, maybe still do, migrating to Florida in the wintertime. Some of the people in an ugly term call them halfbacks. Of they came from New York, they went to Florida, they decided to come halfway back, and
Mm.
so we do have a lot of Yankee transplants here, and we have a large population of Hispanic people here. We've got quite a few people from Cambodia and Vietnam and that kind of thing. I just want everybody to be welcome. I was raised in the military and on military bases and around people of all races and all cultures. And my parents just raised us not to be prejudiced against any group of people. So I actually see more prejudice. If I'm on Facebook, I'm on some of our county groups or town groups or something like that, Rutherford County updates and this, that, and the other kind of stuff. I see people who are more rude to Yankees that moved here than they are, being prejudiced against someone from another race or something like that. I think they tend to blame people who have moved from up north, blame them for the increase in property prices and that kind of thing. And it's just ridiculous. You can't stand still. You're either going to grow or you're going to go backwards. I mean, it's one or the other. And if you're standing still, you're going backwards. So I saw people complaining about that this weekend when it was announced that our community colleges is actually getting another new building for health care, because the nursing program and the EMT program and all have actually been meeting not on the college campus, but they've been meeting in the old elementary school that I attended 60 years ago. And I mean, it's falling apart. And so, yes, there is some tax money going to pay for it, but it was largely financed through grants and private donations. And I saw a bunch of people complaining about that. And I went, you've got to have health care. That community college actually has a massage program now, but they have another campus in the next county over, and the massage program takes place over there. Maybe after they get that new building, they'll have one over here too. I don't know. But, you cannot attract industry and business and all that to a locale that doesn't have good health care. I think that the new building at the college is going to be a blessing to that front and help out the people who have been trying to learn in a crowded 60-year-old building that the air conditioner barely works in. So, progress.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up the idea of stagnation, progress, or regression. And I feel like there's some sort of parallelism between seeing that in your community and also where we see that in the professional massage therapy community. And I'm wondering if I'm crazy for making those connections or if you can speak to it as well.
No, you're not crazy at all, Kirby, because I will tell you something. Now, I still have my license. I am not out massaging the public anymore. My focus is on working for CryoDerm, teaching classes, and every time I teach a class, I revise that class before I teach it again, update it, new research, that kind of thing. You can't stand still. But there are a lot of people. I've taken way more continuing education than I've ever been obligated to take, and I'm still taking it. Even though I'm not out there putting my hands on people anymore. I'll talk about that in a few minutes about the clients that I occasionally work with. But education is never wasted. And I'm going to tell you, I've had people call me up and ask me, do you have any classes that are 4 hours? All I need is 4 hours. And they could not care less whether it's something that they actually have an interest in. I've had people call and go on a rant about how they shouldn't be required to take continuing education. And my response to those people is, honey, you just go on to somebody else's class because I don't want you in mine.
Why would I
And
want
I'll
to?
just tell them.
Yeah.
I'll just tell them. I had to say something a few months ago. My friend from Ireland, who owns a massage school over there, I have taught at her school many, many times, and she comes over here and I host her. I no longer have my own facility. I used to have my own classroom that was a part of my office complex, but I rent a fellowship hall at the church where all my relatives are buried. I rent the fellowship hall for her to teach her classes in, and I advertise the classes for her and host her. And so I want to say, 12, 14 people had signed up for her class. And one of them was, I knew more than one of them. Several of them were people I knew. But this one person that I knew came storming into the class. She was, slammed her notebook and her purse down on the table and was just glowing with negativity. And everyone else was almost everyone else was there, and people were already, seated around the classroom tables and everything. And I just took it on myself right then. And I said, I didn't call her out by name, but I didn't have to. Everybody could tell who I was addressing it to. I said, we're going to have a great class today. Let's not bring any negative energy in here. And the woman said, well, maybe I just need to leave. And I said, well, that's your choice, but I don't want you to ruin everybody else's experience. And there are some people who are just bound and determined to do that, to spoil it for everybody else. So I love education. The day I think I know it all will definitely be the day that I do everybody a favor and retire. I don't resent that at all. There are some regulated states that actually don't require continuing education of their massage therapists. And I think, don't you have a desire to get better at what you do? Don't you have a desire to know more than you know now, to find out, new techniques or something that could help you in your practice? I've been to a few classes that, no, I didn't particularly get much out of it. But then again, I've gone to other classes where it was like a light bulb turned on in my head and I went, dang, I need to be doing that. you know, and I hope some people have those epiphanies when they're in my class of going, hey, I should have been doing that and I'm not. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I know there's so much that I can relate to in what you just said of number one, lifelong learning and a commitment to it. And two, I find that even in the classes where maybe you're sitting through them and you're like, I'm not really getting anything from this, I always find there's at least one thing that you can take away from every class, even if it's, you'll never use it again, or, maybe it's even as educators, you and I were like, well, I know definitely never to do that when I'm teaching a class, right? There's always something that you learn in some capacity in a class.
I can only think of two classes in my whole of these 25 years. And actually, like I said, I started taking classes before licensing was here. One I was disappointed in, not because the knowledge that they were sharing was not valuable. One of the first CE classes that I took, the instructor was late all 3 days of the class. And I mean, she lived in the same town. She wasn't coming from anywhere far away or anything. And I thought that's just unprofessional, because she did live out of town, out of my town. And, I had to drive like an hour to get there and everything. And she just showed up late and disorganized every morning. And I thought, that's not the way to be. Now, she is what I'd say relatively famous now in the world of massage. So I hope that she's improved. I haven't been to another class by her. Then one time I was in a class where at the beginning of the class, the teacher stood up and raised her hands and she said, I just want everyone to pause and go within, whatever that means to you. Now, I was good the first time she said it. I was good the first 2 or 3 times she said it. By the time she's saying it every 10 minutes, I thought, this woman does not have enough material to fill her class time. And that's why she is continuing to do that, because it wasn't any kind of energy work class or anything. I can't actually remember what it was. I think it was something to do with business. But the pause and go within, I think me and a bunch of other people were just hoping that she was going to fall over in front of the class.
Oh,
So, you've teaching is partly being entertaining and part knowledge and a whole lot of engagement and relating to the people that are there in your class. I've taught classes for as little as back during COVID, I taught a class for 2 people. They were 2 people that I know, and a bunch of people canceled. No, I'm sorry, that wasn't during COVID. That was after the hurricane. And the original building that I had planned to hold the class in actually had no water, so I had to scramble to find another class space. And I kept getting messages from people of, we don't have any power down here. I'm not going to come, etc. So a whole lot of people that were signed up for that class canceled. But 2 massage therapists that I have known for a very long time, I mean, I could have held it at my house and they would have come. But as it turned out, another massage therapist in town who did, in fact, have power and water offered me the use of her space. So I've taught classes for 2 people, and I have taught classes for, I think there was 220 folks in my class in Oregon. That was great. One time, the New England Regional Conference, which no longer takes place, unfortunately, and that was a collaboration between all the smaller New England states that really couldn't afford to have a big convention on their own. There were hundreds of people at that. So I've done small ones and I've done large ones. And, I actually kind of prefer small classes. Don't get me wrong. It was a thrill to have a couple of hundred people in my class. But when you're teaching to a small group of people, you have like a business class. I have much more time to interact with them personally and find out what they are struggling with and what they feel like they're lacking in their business and whatever. And I enjoy teaching small classes and I enjoy attending smaller classes.
I'm with you. It's kind of just as you were talking there, it kind of is like massage. Would you rather give a massage to a room full of 200 people or a massage to a group of 1 or 2 people? It's kind of that intimacy and that deeper connection is more possible in a smaller class. I would agree with you.
Absolutely is. And, you might not necessarily experience that deep connection with every single client. It is about connecting. And I think that's the actual secret to getting repeat clients is forming that connection with somebody. Yeah.
Absolutely. I want you to talk to me, Laura, about the whole you. Have you always been in North Carolina?
No, I was born in Savannah, Georgia, and my family over the years was transferred to Charleston, South Carolina, all the Navy towns on the East Coast, Charleston, South Carolina, Norfolk, Virginia. My dad one time was sent to Muscle Shoals, Alabama. There was a training center there, a reserve training center there, and he was put in charge of that. So we lived in Alabama. We lived in Birmingham, Alabama for some time when I was a kid. Let's see, where else do we go? Newport, Rhode Island. Now, I got made fun of up there for my accent. And then by the time we came back, I got made fun of down here for sounding like I was from Rhode Island. So I have 3 brothers. We were all born in different places. That's the way it is when when you're in the military. We were all 4 of us were born in different places.
Let me ask you, just because you brought it up, Laura, can I talk to you about your accent and your drawl?
Well, I sound country. In fact, I went to teach one time at the Canadian Massage Conference,
Mhm.
which back then, I think they're still in it, but back then it was Scott Dartnon, Eric Brown, and Melanie Hayden. I was invited up there to teach a class, and after the class, Scott said, "Your accent scared the hell out of the Canadians."
Yeah.
So it is what it is. I try not to use too much slang when I'm talking. I just read an article yesterday about, the Appalachian dialect, and I've read a lot of articles about that. But my grandparents, for example, who are all dead and gone now, but the Scott and the Irish people, a lot of them immigrated to North Carolina because it was the place that looked the most like home with the Appalachian Mountains and all of that. And so I've had some really, met some really backwoods people. Now, my grandparents weren't necessarily backwoods, but my mother's parents were dirt poor sharecropping farmers for a long time. And then finally, one of my uncles did become successful and buy them their own farm. But they spoke differently. You know, they had words for things that are no longer in common usage. And so I grew up around that. But I also was fortunate, like I said, to travel in the military and meet different people from different cultures. And so, yeah, I have an accent. This is who I am.
Right. Well, my question behind the question, Laura, I found even with my Southern accent, sometimes people either cannot understand on just a baseline communication level, they can't understand what you're saying, or it's speed or something like that. Or sometimes there is a bias that the drawl is a sign of lower intelligence. Now, I've taken your classes, I followed you on social media, your videos, stuff like that. I find you to be so engaging. Really, I love your humor. You are a very humorous and engaging personality. I'm wondering if the dialect has ever been a sticking issue as an educator for you.
Well, I don't think it has, other than that comment that Scott Dartnall made about me about me scaring the Canadians. But no, I don't really think it has held me back in any way. I've been a musician for a long time since my mother got my very first guitar with green stamps. You might not even be old enough to know what those are. I started playing the guitar when I was about 9. I started playing the piano when I was about 6. I've got a big old sign on my front porch now that says "Let's stay home." So I think I've been out one or two times to play music since COVID was over with. And I certainly didn't go out while that was going on because I thought, no, I don't need to be playing music in a small bar with 100 people packed in there. But I've been used to being in front of a lot of people for many, many years. I've played in somebody's band or another since I was about 14 or 15 years old. So I've always been used to being in the front and singing. And I don't know how much of a hick I sound like when I'm singing. I've never really given much thought. I don't think it's held me back any. And if someone thinks that I have lower intelligence because of the way that I talk, that's on them, not on me, because, I know what my own accomplishments have been. I also know what my own failures have been. And believe me, I've had a few. But I've managed to write a lot of books and have a lot of magazine articles published and everything. So I must have some level of intelligence. The owner of the massage school, back when I had to take an exam, the NCBTMB didn't exist yet, and I took what the National Certification Board had back then, which was the exam in therapeutic massage and body work. Now, that exam made me glad that I had attended a school that was heavy on energy work because there were a lot of questions on there related to that. And I think the board certification has calmed that down some, and the NCBTMB has calmed that down some. The NCBTMB content outline states energetic anatomy. They go into zero detail about what that entails. When I took the national certification exam in therapeutic massage and bodywork, they asked for specific meridian points and stuff like that. So I thought, well, praise the Lord that I went to this school, because if I had gone to a school that didn't teach any energy work, I wouldn't have known the answer to those questions. So.
Right. Well, and thank you for bringing us back to my initial question. Talk to me about the whole you, because it sounds like, and help clarify this timeline for me if I've got it wrong, but it sounds like you started out there in an administrative role. And were you taking classes at the same time that you were helping out in that way?
No, I wasn't. I started working there after I left the restaurant. And so when she told me that she needed a school administrator, I went to work over there, and I saw people coming into the building. She also had a professional massage clinic there. Now, like I said, there was no licensing yet, but she had therapists working there who had been through her shorter programs, from that she started back in the beginning. She had therapists working there who had already completed the education. And so I saw people coming into the office looking like this, you know, and walking out an hour later looking like, and I thought that has to be the best job in the world, helping people feel better.
Mm.
So that's what spurred me to sign up for the school. And I mean, I probably hadn't been working there 3 or 4 days when I signed up for it,
Okay.
signed up for that weekend program. So she had a lot of good teachers there, even though it was way out in the boonies, and it was a beautiful, beautiful place. The building itself still exists, but it's a private home now. It was a huge log cabin like structure, had a little waterfall in front, had a huge, huge, I think altogether there were like 28 acres up there, had a huge field behind the backyard that looked out over the mountains. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful atmosphere. On the inside, there were a bunch of treatment rooms, a couple of big bathrooms, and a huge fireplace in the main classroom where everyone went for hands-on practice. It was just a beautiful, beautiful place. And, there were some exceptions, but most of the students there were just lovely people who had the desire to learn about massage therapy. The owner and I used to make a bet with each other every time a new class started of who was going to be the first dropout,
No.
who was going to be the first person to commit inappropriate behavior, because we could spot them a mile away. It was one of the great experiences of my life. It really was. And she had a lot of very talented teachers. We also had classes in lymphatic drainage and neuromuscular therapy and a lot of different things. And she was not one of these one woman shows. And I know some of them who, one person teaches everything in the school.
Yeah.
Now, I have never liked that because number one, they're only getting one person's view on things. But
Mhm.
number two, what if something happens to that person?
Yeah.
Where are those students going to be left hanging or what? So, she had teachers that came from far and wide to teach different classes, and I feel like I got a good, rounded, well-rounded education in that. And also, she did not skip on anatomy and pathology. I kind of feel like if you're going to teach massage therapy, if you're going to teach hands-on work, you need to be an expert in anatomy. You need to be able to tell people what muscle you're touching and where its origin is and where its insertion is and what it does. And so that's the only class that the national board ever turned me down for. I'm approved. I have about 30 or 35 classes approved.
Mhm.
And I had a whole lot of people asking me to do an anatomy refresher. And so I created this big old anatomy class and sent it in, and they turned it down and said, people need to know that when they get out of school. Well, my response at the time was because, like every other state who has suddenly started licensing people, they grandfathered in a lot of people,
Mhm.
and every state that has gotten licensure did that. They grandfathered in a bunch of people who, previously didn't do this or didn't do that. And some of these people have been out of school for years. They have forgotten things. But yeah, they turned it down and said you should know that when you get out of entry level massage school. So, yes, it would be ideal if everybody knew it when they got out of entry level massage school. But entry level schools, largely are not perfect. I'm sure there are a few that as close as you can get. Ethics is my pet subject. And I had one student say, well, our teacher didn't like ethics, so whenever it was time for ethics class, she just talked about something else. And I just went, oh my God, what kind of favor does she think she's doing these people? That was one of the worst things I've ever heard. Terrible.
Yeah, I don't want to throw mud or anything, but it also sounds like academic fraud. Like the curriculum, I'm sure North Carolina has ethics as a part of the standard curriculum for the programs that they approve.
Yes, we do. And I served 2 terms on our board of massage therapy. I was on a bunch of different committees. I was on the ethics committee. I was on the school approval committee and this committee and that committee. Anyway, on the school approval one time, I had been on that committee for a long time, and one day I had gone to attend a continuing education class that was held up in Asheville. That's about an hour away from my house. And so I'm on the way back home. I decided that I would take the scenic route through the mountains and the country coming back home. Instead, I had gone there on the interstate, because I wanted to be on time. And I thought, I'm just going to take the scenic route back home. So I am driving down this mountain road, and I saw a great big old sign that had a massage school on it that I did not recognize the name of. Now, number one, I was on the school approval committee. And number two, we had a listing on our board's website of every approved school in North Carolina. And I thought, God, I've never heard of that place. So I actually got out of the car and took a picture of the sign. And when I got back home, I emailed that to the board president and other board members. And I said, have we approved this school? I said, I just passed this on the way home from Asheville, and I've never heard of this school. No, we hadn't heard of the school, but what had happened was the owner of that school, which actually had been approved under another name, he had seen somebody selling this sign or something on eBay. And he liked the way the sign looked. Now, it was not painted, it was hand carved.
Wow.
And so he just bought that sign and put it up in front of his school. The board said to him, well, you got approved under one name. You can't just be advertising under another name. And we didn't put him out of business, but we ended up fining him a big chunk of money. And we also made it for the next year or two where he had to run every piece of advertising he was going to do by us before we approved of it. Because, that's crazy. You can't get a massage school approved under one name and then go, oh, well, I don't like that. I'm going to call it Laura's School of Massage.
Right. The board has to know what you're doing.
They do. And I've actually had a lot of people over the years ask me when I was going to open a massage school, and my standard answer to that has always been never.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. The restaurant was a lot of work. I was trying to get to the point where I did not have to. The restaurant was a lot of physical hard work. Standing on your feet all day long and lifting up 50-pound sacks of flour and that kind of thing. But yeah, running a massage school is hard work. Having been the administrator of one for 5 years, a lot of that work fell to me. And yes, it is hard work. I admire the people that do it. And, there's such a variance in America. I know people who own schools who have 6 students. Some of the corporate schools probably have too many in a class, 30 or more. It all depends on what you got. And most of the states now do have something in their regulation that for hands-on classes, that if you have more than X number of students, you must have a teaching assistant for every number over that. And that's true also for continuing education providers. If you're going to have more than, you need to have an assistant for every 20 people. If you have more than 20 people in your class, get an assistant. So
let me ask you, Laura, first of all, I want to hold space. And I want to give you kudos. I think you're the first guest we've had on here that has really taken the time to give a description of the physical space where you were learning. I can't resist but ask the question, are there any surviving photographs of your school?
I do have some photographs from when we had a reunion. I think it was 15 years, 10 or 15 year reunion. I do have some photographs from that. I did not have any photographs. I can't even remember if we, of course, everybody didn't have a cell phone then back then either. I can't remember if we actually ever had a class picture of the class when it began. Pretty much everybody has school does that nowadays. Class picture of graduation day or anything like that. I looked and couldn't find any. but I know that I have some pictures somewhere. I think it might say, I think it's on my Facebook page. It might say Whole U Reunion or something, but I'll have to look that up. But yeah, I do have some pictures of the inside. It was very beautiful,
It sounds like
very beautiful building. Yes.
I love that. Sometimes we don't the space in which we're doing our learning can also be so important. So I'm very thankful that you shared that with us.
Oh, it was a beautiful space. And I'll tell you something, a lot of the students were actually had some involvement in that. When that building was built, it was not purpose built to be a massage school. It was built to be part of it was it has an upstairs, and I think the original builders of that house were going to live in the upstairs and run a business in the downstairs. They intended to have an organic farm out there. And so I guess they were planning on selling produce on the inside or something. And it's way out at the end of a dead end dirt road. You're not going to just happen upon that by chance. Now, when the school was there, they did have a big sign at the end of the road that says the Whole U School of Massage and Bodywork, with an arrow pointing out there. But yeah, it's a dead end road. So it's not something that people would just be normally passing by. But when the owner bought that building, the floor on the lower level, the main level, was concrete. And she went, I got to do something about this floor. So a bunch of volunteers, students who had taken her shorter classes, and she used to rent a building downtown. It was called the Homeowners Association building. It was just a big, like a community house or whatever. She used to hold her classes in that building. So she had already taught quite a few students from over the years. And they came, and the floor that they put down was they got hundreds of brown paper bags and tore them into random pieces. They covered that floor in the pieces, and then they put polyurethane over it. So it was a very, I hope it shows up in those pictures. Maybe there'll be a picture too where it shows up in that. But that was put in there by former students of hers and people who were just interested in helping her get that building ready to be a massage school. So it was very unique. I had never seen anything like it. I never saw a torn place in it or anything like that. And I continued to go back there for years after I left working there and everything. But yeah, brown paper bags and polyurethane.
Wow.
And it was very unique and very beautiful.
I also want to ask because this is the mid to late 90s, and by then we see a growth, a boom really of people interested in massage therapy and alternative forms of healthcare. At the time, you have things like textbooks are starting to come in, particularly I think Sandy Fritz had come out in 95. Salvo's was out by 98, I believe. Were there specific texts that your instructors used at the time?
Our anatomy text, and one of my last acts before I left there as administrator, was to actually get her to change that. The anatomy textbook that we had was Tortora and Grabowski, which is actually used in medical schools.
Mhm.
And it goes so far beyond what massage therapists have to know. Yes, we might be the muscle doctors, but we're not doctors. And doctors get a much more intense education than what we do. So this book was this dang thick. And a lot of people took one look at it and were just immediately intimidated.
Yeah.
And so I persuaded her before I left there to change to a book by the person's last name was Prem Kumar. I can't remember their first name. But anyway, it was a doctor who had also been a massage therapist and wrote an anatomy book for massage therapists that was much simpler. The massage therapy book that we use was by Mark Beck.
Okay.
And I got to meet him in person a couple of times years after I was out of massage school. He was a very nice man and a wonderful person. And, he was in a wheelchair. He had been injured in a skiing accident, but he had that book out there, and that's the massage therapy book that we used. We also used Ruth Werner's pathology book, one of her, I can't remember what edition it was. And, she's like she and Sandy Fritz and Susan, they all have a lot of editions now. I am on a committee at the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education with Susan. I've known her for quite a few years. One time years ago at AMTA National, and I don't remember what town we were in, but ran into her in the bathroom and she said, will you come in my class for a few minutes? So I did, and I met Sandy Fritz years ago at one of AMTA's convention, and I always said I just want to be Sandy Fritz when I grow up. You know, she truly is. She has a wonderful perspective on massage therapy because she's been at it for many, many years, and she has seen way more than I have as far as the changes in the profession and everything. She's just someone that I greatly admire, and also greatly admire Susan. So, yeah, Ruth's pathology book, Mark Beck's massage book, and Prem Kumar's anatomy book. I have no idea if that book is in later editions or still in print. One thing I'm particularly proud of, the ethics book that we used in massage school was Nina McIntosh's The Educated Heart. And I can't remember back then which edition it was. I want to say it was the first or the second, but I met Nina in person at an AMTA national meeting. Back then, I had also published my first book. We met in Atlanta. That's where the convention was that year. Anyway, Lippincott was Nina's publisher, and they had also published my first book, which was now it's called Plain and Simple Guide to Massage Therapy Examinations, but back then it was called Plain and Simple Guide to the National Certification Exam because that was the only exam that was out there at the time. So I met Nina. Lippincott always had a big dinner for all of their authors that were in attendance at AMTA National. They unfortunately are out of the massage publishing business now. Lippincott only publishes healthcare related books, but they dropped their massage line back in 2017, I believe it was. But I met Nina there, and we were sitting beside each other. You know, we did the "Where are you from? Where are you from?" She was living in Asheville, which is, you know, less than an hour away from me. So we became friends. I went to one of her classes up there. I had her to come to my facility and teach a class, and she made Lippincott sign a contract. Nina finished the third edition of her book literally while she was on her deathbed. She got amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. And that's a cruel disease because it doesn't mess with your mind whatsoever, but you're just sitting there trapped in your body watching it fall apart. You get to where you can't move, you get to where you can't speak, you can't swallow, you can't do this and can't do that. And I think the day that Nina could no longer communicate was the day that she decided to check out. She had gone from speaking to trying to write on a whiteboard, but then the muscles in her hand gave out and she couldn't do that anymore. And she was very frustrated. I'm sure it was frustrating. But she made Lippincott sign a contract that I would get to author the future editions of her book. And then after she passed, her family actually gave me the copyrights to the book. So I have published the last three editions of it, editions 4, 5, and 6. And I still call it Nina McIntosh's The Educated Heart because it was her idea. And there are still a lot of her words in there. I certainly haven't gone through there and changed every word that she wrote because it's good advice, even all those years later. So why change that? You know, Nina had gone to work as a social worker in a psychiatric institution. And the first thing that she was told when she got that job was, do not touch the patients. And it took her about 3 days to realize that these people were truly suffering from a lack of human touch. Nobody touched them unless it was somebody that had to help dress them for whatever reason or something. And so she realized what a big deal touch was. She got fired for touching somebody. And then she decided to go to school and become a rolfer. So that was her career for 30 years. She practiced out in, I want to say, Boulder, Colorado. Then she moved out here to Asheville, North Carolina, and that's where she was living when she passed. So I'm very honored to be carrying on that book. The 6th edition of it came out, I think it was near the end of the year last year. So,
Yeah. And I want to take a moment and kind of acknowledge that legacy of Nina's. Yeah, I'm wondering, was Nina an educator herself?
she was, like I said, I went to Asheville and took an ethics class from her. She was an excellent speaker. when I look back on her classes, I am sure in retrospect that she had ALS a long time before she was diagnosed with it, because I had hired her to come down to my facility and teach a class. My classroom, if it was just a lecture class, you could comfortably get 30 or so people in there. If it was a hands-on table class, I limited that to 14 people, because 7 massage tables fit well inside my classroom, and I can't stand people being right on top of each other. So Nina was going to do a lecture class in the educated heart, and she called me up a few days before the class and asked me if I had a microphone. And I said, Nina, I'm a musician. Of course I have a microphone. And I said, but my classroom is small. I said, I really don't think you'll need it. And she said, well, I'd rather have it. She said, I don't know what's going on with my voice here lately. And then that night after the class, my husband and I were going to take her out to dinner. And we had to park across the street from the restaurant. Now, Nina was not feeble by any means at this point in time. But when we started to cross the street, and I mean, it's the 2-lane main street in our town, you know, and Nina asked my husband, she said, Champ, can I hold your arm while we cross the street? She said, my legs just feel like they're going to fail me here lately.
Mm.
So I think that was probably the beginnings of that, and that she just had not been diagnosed with it yet.
If you met in Atlanta, it sounds like maybe that was the 2006 National Convention. Does that sound about right?
That's probably about right, because my first book, The Plain and Simple Guide, I had self-published that at home. I was taking it down to the local printer and getting 20 copies made up for the people that were in the massage school.
Yeah.
I never, you know, it never occurred to me to sell it anywhere else. And one day, the owner of the massage school got a letter from Lippincott asking her if she would be a reviewer for them on massage textbooks. And I mean, that doesn't mean say it's good or bad. It means go through it and, you know, see if there's mistakes, see what's missing, you know, offer your opinion and everything. And when that letter came, she threw it at me and she said, I don't have time to do this. Do you want to do it? And I read it and I said, sure. So one of the questions on that application was, have you ever published anything?
Mm.
At that point in time, I had actually had a magazine article published that had nothing to do with massage. It was in a mountain. It was in, I don't even know if it still exists anymore, but it was a magazine that we had about the Smoky Mountains. It was called Spirit of the Smokies. And I had had an article published in that. So I cheekily wrote down my little self-published book, and I should have had that out here for this meeting because I'd show it to you. Kirby, it was pathetic. I had it wire bound. It was not professionally edited. There was not one single illustration in it of any kind. It was basically just a whole lot of information and definitions. So when I put that down and sent in that application, Lippincott asked me to send them a copy. And I sent it, and then they wrote back to me and asked if I could send them 7 copies for their reviewers. And the next thing I knew, I had a contract for that book. Publishing in their paradigm, you know, is a 2-year process, because it goes through a development editor, it goes through a copy editor, it goes out for review several times and all of that. Yeah, I believe Atlanta was in 2006. They had already brought me on board. I can't remember the year that that first edition was actually, they called it the first edition. My first edition didn't count. You know, they called it the first edition.
Yeah.
I don't remember what year that was, but it was sometime around that time. So Nina was just a wonderful person. And when she passed, I met her family members who came out from Colorado. I met her family members at her memorial service. Nina hated social media. That's one of the big additions. Actually, she hated the internet altogether. That's one of the big additions that I had to make to that ethics book, because there was hardly anything in there about the internet whatsoever. And when she decided that she would tell people, you know, that she was ill, I said, Nina, you have a lot of fans. I said, we need to let people know about this. Well, she started a caring bridge. And when I shared that on social media, a few days later, she told me, she said, do you know like 800 people have contacted me And I mean, if it was today, it'd probably be 8,000. But that was early days still of Facebook and all that. But yeah, she was blown away by the number of people that visited her Caring Bridge and told her how much that book had meant to them, and that they had attended her class and loved it and that kind of thing. She was really just a wonderful person.
Thank you for sharing that, and also thank you for keeping her memory alive, especially with the title. I think that's a really honorable thing that you're doing, Laura.
Well, it was a little bit funny in 2010 or 11, I think it was 2010. The World Massage Festival wanted to give her an award that's named after Auntie Margaret, the more or less the person most well known. She's passed on too, but she was known as a great teacher of Lomi Lomi. And so they had started, she was a Hawaiian elder, and the festival had started an award every year in her honor called the Auntie Margaret Humanitarian Award. And they wanted to give it to Nina. And by this point in time, Nina was in the nursing home and not able to come. And I told her she was getting that award and asked her if it would be okay for me to accept it on her behalf and that I would bring it to her in the nursing home. And she said, "Well, I don't think I'm any kind of humanitarian." I said, "Nina, you have no idea, how many massage therapists you have touched with this. I can't remember what year Ben Benjamin and Cherie Sonimo published The Ethics of Touch. It might have been a few years before Nina's book, but there was not very much out there about ethics. I just sent her book to somebody this morning because I got a call yesterday from a very distressed young therapist.
Mhm.
And I just asked her, I said, "Do you have this book?" And I actually know her grandparents, and her grandparents had bought my exam book for her, my test prep book for her, whenever she was still in massage school and about to take the NBLEX.
Mhm.
And I said, "Do you have this book?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Well, I'm going to send it to you. I actually just sent it to her today because I'm sort of out there as if somebody writes into ABMP, appeared now for 8 years, they occasionally will say, would you be willing to send me an email and say, would you be willing to have a conversation with this person? And I never turn anybody down if I can help it. So she called me yesterday and she was in great distress over something that had happened at work with an inappropriate client. So sent her the book this morning.
That's awesome. Tell us, Laura, for those who are interested, how can they get a hold of a copy of that book?
All of my books are on Amazon and on my own website, which is lauraallenmt.com. There are links on there to all of my books. But yeah, that now when you go on Amazon, you will sometimes see I always remove my self-published previous editions of a book whenever I come out with a new edition. But you'll always see editions that use that people are selling and that kind of thing. But if you want the latest copy, go click on my website, which is Laura Allen MT. The latest edition of The Educated Heart is the 6th edition.
There are a couple aspects of your career that I really want to touch on about your experience as an expert witness. I definitely want to make sure we hold time to talk about CryoDerm, the evolution of becoming an educator in the States, but then expanding that internationally. So start with whichever one of those you want to, take it chronological. Tell me about all of it.
Let's start with the teaching part of it. Like I said, when I went to the massage school and the owner went, "Oh, yay, now you can teach marketing." I want to say that I had 3 years during a restaurant hiatus there. I had 3 years of being a teacher in public schools before I decided that was not for me. Um, so I had actually taken North Carolina effective teaching training, which every teacher here was obligated to take. And I did have a bachelor's in psychology, which wasn't exactly something you're going to necessarily teach in elementary or high school, but you certainly need to know how to deal with those little boogers. So it came in handy. I used to have it in my mind that I wanted to be a psychologist. And, one day it struck me people don't come to psychologists because they're happy. They come because they have problems. And do I want to sit there all day, every day listening to problems? And I decided that was no. So I did enjoy my time. teaching in public schools to a certain extent, but I decided that wasn't for me. So when I began to teach in massage school, that quickly evolved from teaching marketing to I ended up teaching business. And no, I didn't have a degree in that, but I had real life experience in that for many years. And then as classes went on, she added me as an assistant. I ended up being assistant in most of the classes that were ever taught there. And getting at least a little bit of experience in a bunch of different things. One semester we were without an anatomy teacher, and I ended up teaching anatomy. Now I'm an anatomy nerd. That's one of my pet subjects, so I enjoyed doing that. But I applied. I cannot even remember the first class that I got approved for by the national board. My exam prep class, AMTA North Carolina chapter, has had me teach that every year for years, and they invite students for free. They pay me, but students don't have to pay, and so that's an entry level thing. They're not going to get any type of credit for attending that. They'll just get an intensive 8-hour class in how to pass that exam. I don't remember what the first class was that I ever had approved, but I knew that I wanted to teach and that I wanted to reach a broader audience and that I didn't want to stay at the massage school forever. So I got approved in like 2002. Here's a little history for you. The process to that used to be so long. It was insane. I mean, you would have to have a 3-ring notebook of information, not only about yourself, but about your class. And I mean, they used to really strongly vet every word of every class that was submitted. Now it's like a one-page thing on the internet. So that has changed a whole lot. And of course, there are thousands more providers now than what there were back when I first got started. So I do have some body work classes approved. Many of my classes are ethics classes, business classes, how to use research to market your massage therapy practice, which I originally turned in as a marketing class. And then, like I said, I update these classes regularly. And as I went on and on, I resubmitted that to them. And I said, would you take a look at this? Because I'm pretty sure it would qualify as a research class. So they did reclassify that into a research class. Some of the bodywork classes that I've had approved include TMJ, fibromyalgia, advanced massage techniques, just different things. I think I have somewhere between 30 and 35 classes approved. So that's been my evolution as a teacher. I have been fortunate to go to 31, I believe it is, AMTA chapters, and that's been exciting. Then went up and taught at the Canadian Massage Conference. And my first trip to Ireland, which was in 1999, I actually did not go to teach. I went to play some music in the pubs over there. And I had looked on the internet and made an appointment with a massage therapist to get a massage while I was over there. So it was up in Connemara, which is an extremely remote and beautiful part of the country. I did not tell him that I was a massage therapist. So I get the massage, and at the end of it, I got up and confessed, and I said, would you let me give you a massage? And he agreed to that. So I gave him a massage, and then he said, I am sure that the owner of the school that I attended would love to have you teach something like this. Would you be interested in that? And I went, oh yeah. So I have made, like I said, the first trip wasn't to teach massage. I think I've made a total of 17 trips over there. Most beautiful place in the world. I love it, and so I feel very fortunate to have been there. So that was my evolution as a teacher. Later, in a couple of weeks, I'll be at the World Massage Festival in Las Vegas. I'm teaching 5 classes out there, and I have taught at every one of those. My first one was in 2010, so I've taught at every one of those since then. The festival itself was in existence before I came along.
Let me just jump in here real quick before we go much further. Was Canada your first international teaching experience, or was it Ireland?
No, it was Ireland. I went to Canada after I went to Ireland, and I believe they got me up there because they used to do a whole virtual thing. I'm not sure if they're still doing it or not, but they used to do a whole big virtual event every year with a lot of teachers online, and I had done one or two of those before, and they invited me to come in person. So to one of their big conferences, and it was in Niagara Falls, just a beautiful place. So you can't beat that. Look out your hotel room, see Niagara Falls. It was a lot of fun. And my father, my birth father, whom I did not meet until I was 42 years old, was actually born in Ontario. That was not my only trip to Canada. I had been up there before, but that was my first trip to Niagara Falls, and I had a good time up there.
I can't resist at least one more follow-up question, Laura. Do you find any particular challenges or differences in teaching massage therapy internationally compared to the States?
No, I don't think so. I think that people everywhere, especially when it's not required of them, people everywhere are eager to learn. Yeah, there are going to be those people that they waited till the last minute, and you just happen to be the teacher that's next in line or whatever. But I think there are a lot of massage therapists out there that are like me and you. They want to learn something new. They're eager to learn something new, and there you go. So, no, I haven't found it. I haven't found it very, very much different.
All right. And then I'm sure these all have connections that intersect at some place, but which do you want to tackle next? An expert witness or the cryoderm experience?
I'll talk about the expert witness, and then I'll close out with CryoDerm. The expert witness thing, I was approached my first time back in 2010 by a law firm that was representing a woman who was accusing a massage therapist of breaking her collarbone. Now, this massage therapist had been licensed only for about 6 months. And as it turned out, the lady who had filed the lawsuit, she said that her story was that her regular therapist was out of town and that she needed a massage and that she booked a massage with this therapist. She said the therapist had me face down on the table, and she said she did something that my therapist has never done before. She ran her thumb under my scapula, and I thought, I don't remember ever doing a massage where I didn't run my thumb under the scapula. So I just thought, wonder what her massage therapist does. But, I also, this is related, I also used to review other books for Lippincott. And I had just finished reviewing a pharmacology for massage therapist book for them. So that was fresh in my mind. Well, when the attorney sent me all these medical documents and everything, I was paying attention to the medications that she had taken and everything. And the first side effect on one of them was spontaneous breakage of the bones.
Mm.
So I called that lawyer and I said, I'm assuming you'd like for me to be brutally honest, because he wanted me to testify, for the woman, not for the massage therapist. And I said, if I'm going to testify for anyone, it's going to be this massage therapist and not your client. So adios, and you owe me X amount of money. Because I reviewed about 600 pages for him. Now, I don't get a lot of those cases. I'm not going to make a living for it. I usually get one or two a year. There are people out there a lot more popular than I am that are doing it. But last year I had one that I reviewed over 12,000 pages of documents for.
Wow.
And, most of these cases have been in relation to a massage therapist, accused of something by a client. Also, I will say related to that during the time that I spent on the North Carolina board, the very first meeting I ever attended, we had a disciplinary hearing, and we had at least one of those for nearly every meeting I ever attended in 6 years. And that's a stressful thing to have a massage therapist career weighing in it's in the balance of your hands there and the other board members of, was this person guilty? Was this person not guilty? It's majority rules in those situations. And so on our board at the time, there were 7 board members. So if 4 of us thought that the person was guilty and 3 of us thought that the person wasn't, the 4 of us won, and the massage therapist lost their license. I feel terrible to say that they won because I saw cases there where I did not believe for 1 second that the massage therapist was guilty of what they had been accused of, but I was outvoted by other members. And I've seen it go to the other way. I thought somebody was guilty of sin, and I was voted down by other members. So it's just a gamble. All that I can say to any and every massage therapist is be on your best behavior at all times, because even a innocent slip, you accidentally expose someone or something, be careful, because there are people who will sue you for that. It pays very well, and it's up to you how much you charge for that. When I get first approached by somebody, I normally will get an email saying, "You were recommended to me by so and so. Can we have a call?" Then that's where it gets down to discussing fees and what amount of time it's going to take. And one of the questions I always ask is, when do you expect this to go to trial, or do I have to come in person, to be deposed or anything? Because I do have things on my schedule, and I'm not going to blow off a class that I've had planned and advertised for months to take on a case if it's going to interfere with that. So that's the way I operate. But yeah, if you want to get started, I can only assume that my first contact was made because of I already had a textbook or two out there. So I don't know. I don't remember why the first one ever called me, but almost all the ones who have called me since then have been because somebody recommended me. The last case that I did, one of the well-known teachers you've mentioned already is the one who recommended me for that because she already had other commitments. So that's the way it goes. And CryoDerm, I've been working at CryoDerm for 6 years now. Back in 2015, I still had my clinic operating, and I had about a dozen people working there. And my previous husband had been diagnosed with cancer, stage 4 cancer, in 2014. Now, at the end of 2014, he went through his treatment. He finished that. He was doing well. He had an aneurysm that just really knocked him down. And then about 9 months later, once you have an aneurysm, you always have it. They'll do something to it, but it's still there. Anyway, his began leaking, life-threatening situation, and he survived that surgery, and then they did a planned surgery on it. At any rate, back in 2015, I hired someone to manage my office because by that point, I had pretty much backed off. I'd been there since 2003. I had pretty much backed off from doing all massage and was just running the office. And I mean, I occasionally would take a client, but if a client passed away, one of my personal clients passed away, or quit coming for whatever reason, I did not attempt to replace them with anyone. I was just phasing myself out. So in 2015, when my husband was so sick, I hired an office manager to run the place. Very competent, very nice person. She had experience working at our hospital and all of that, scheduling and everything. But I felt like it was suffering from the lack of my presence there. So in 2016, I closed that business. I left our website up for a year and a half. Our social media pages up for a year and a half. I got the Chamber of Commerce to announce, and I had put it on our website, that if you have a gift certificate that has not been redeemed, or a package deal that you are still owed massage on, contact these people. I had like 8 of my former employees who continued to honor those, and that I continued to pay for doing those for the next year and a half. So if you want to know the integrity way to go out of business, that's it. But during 2015, I met one of the owners of Soothing Touch, the other, big massage cream company and that thing. I met them at an event, and they offered me a job. So I actually took that job, and it was working remotely. Their office is in New Mexico, and I had to periodically go out there. But I stayed with them for 3 years, and then I left there voluntarily in 2018. Later on, one of the owners of Soothing Touch, who lives here in North Carolina now and who I'm still good friends with, told me that he said, CryoDerm would like to speak to you if you'd like to speak to them. And so he said, "Is it okay for me to give him your phone number?" And I said, "Yeah." So I went down to Florida for the FSMTA meeting, I believe it was, and met with the owner there. I love CryoDerm because it is a family-owned company. They make their products in the United States of America, and they do go on plant-based formulas. Now, every formula has plant extracts, plant products in it. Not every formula is all plant stuff. There's other things in there, and they're very transparent about their ingredients. But the owner of CryoDerm is a licensed massage therapist. His wife is, co-owner, and she's the financial officer of the company. She is also a licensed massage therapist. Catherine Holcomb Kirby, who is the executive assistant to the director, and she plans, helps coordinate all of our conventions. All of the convention staff are licensed massage therapists, except for one licensed esthetician, because she was involved in helping to create our face cream. And we have a roster of lovely educators. James Wazlowski is a CryoDerm educator. Bob McAtee. Bob has had his books translated into more languages than any other massage author that I know. I mean, it's crazy. The man could start a library. And
Really?
so Bob is from Oregon and teaches around at AMTA and at different massage schools and everything. Lynn Teachworth from Florida owns a company called Truenomics. We also have Sheila Alexander and yours truly. So CryoDerm has supported education since the beginning of their company, and I think they've been in business now for about 22 years, and I've been there for the last 6 of it. So I'm very happy to get to work remotely from home, and I see them usually once or twice a year at a convention. Last year I interviewed the CEO, Lloyd List. I interviewed him while I was at the World Massage Festival, and that's a pinned post on their Facebook page. So I'm happy to be working for a family-owned company. Even though they do big business, they're still, you can still say they're a small family-owned business, and that's what I like about it, is the fact that there's not some great big board of directors telling them that they have to raise prices or cut quality. Some of the other massage product companies out there are part of a big conglomerate that's selling pretzels and ice cream and car parts and whatever. And I just like the fact that CryoDerm's focus is on topical pain relief. For years, when they first opened, it was only available through chiropractors, podiatrists, physical therapists, and that kind of thing. But now it's available to the general public, and I really appreciate them. I really do. I couldn't work for a company that I disliked their ethics or whatever. I couldn't do it. So.
Definitely. Thank you for taking us on that journey. This isn't like a paid partnership or a sponsorship or anything, but if people were interested in getting their hands on some CryoDerm products, do you know the best way to get involved with them?
Well, CryoDerm is sold on Amazon. It's also sold on Walmart.com, and it is sold on our website, www.cryoderm.com. Now, there is 2 different stores on that website. One is password protected for licensed healthcare providers, so massage therapists, physicians, PTs, anybody who, athletic trainers. You can sign up on there, or you can give them a call. Their number is listed on the website, and give them your license number, and you'll get access to the wholesale pricing on there with no required minimum order. Also, our shipping is free on Amazon and Walmart.com. Our products are out there. They're very good. I'm going to give a plug. My personal favorites are the magnesium products. We have a magnesium calming cream and magnesium oil, and all of our magnesium is from the Dead Sea. That's the most mineral rich place on earth, and a lot of members of the public are using that, not necessarily from a massage therapist, but the magnesium oil people. We've gotten a lot of messages that says, I rub this into the soles of my feet at night and it helps me sleep. The massage cream, if I'm going to give a massage, it's going to be with a magnesium calming cream, because they are very devoted to research, and they had that magnesium calming cream is manufactured with transdermal hydrogel, that is the same technology used by the pharmaceutical industry to make adhesive pain patches and, transdermal medications. 80% of the magnesium actually gets into your body, not just sitting on the skin. So that's my favorite product. And that's, these days I work on my husband. That's about it. I very occasionally take a client who has traumatic brain injury. I got a grant a long time ago, early in my career, from AMTA for working with people in comas and persistent vegetative states.
Mhm.
And that's still a love of mine, or somebody who is really in need of positive touch. I stopped a few months back when she went to a nursing home, but I'd spent about a year and a half working with a 40-year-old woman who had an aneurysm followed by a stroke. I had a traumatic brain injury and had some contractures, and I went and worked with her almost every day for a year and a half. She happened to live right here in the neighborhood, and I would just go over there and mainly do range of motion things with her to try and get her moving again. And it's very rewarding. There have been some heartbreaks over the years where somebody that I really thought was going to get better ended up passing, or somebody that the doctors thought was really going to come out of the state that they were in, that they ended up passing. But I will take those cases one at a time, and that's pro bono. That's my giving back to somebody, for everything that massage has given me.
Let's move into some closing thoughts, Laura.
Okay.
Tell me, what significant trends have you really noticed in the massage therapy profession, and what do you think practitioners can gain from an understanding of history?
Well, one big transition that I have noticed is how fewer massage schools there are than used to be. Now, when I went to work at the massage school, which was, back in 1999, the owner of the school had a big old database that she wanted me to go through and verify and, make sure they were still in business and all this. And back at that time, there were about 1,800 schools on it in 1999. Now, I have updated that thing, several times over the years. And last year I started updating it and got sidetracked writing. I actually did 2 books last year, but revising 2 books last year. But if the schools that were on that list do not have a website, they automatically get removed from the list, because who in the world is operating these days a massage school without nobody? I mean, literally, there's nobody running a massage school that doesn't have a website. But then I would go through and verify them. So I am down now to less than 1,000. That many schools off of the list. There's 1,000 of them that are no longer in existence. So that's one thing that, there's less options for going to school. The other trend that I see is the proliferation, of course, of massage therapy franchises. And I'm not going to complain about that, because, something, there are chiropractic franchises, there are urgent care franchises, for crying out loud. I bet there are 6 of them in my county. And every time somebody on Facebook says, "What's being built at the corner of blah, blah, blah?" And half the time the answer is, it's another urgent care. That's the proliferation of it. And also the pricing of massage. Now, every once in a while, every few years, I'll do what I call a scientific Facebook poll. I guess I could start doing that on Instagram. But I will ask, if you don't mind saying, where do you live? What circumstances are you working in? And what do you charge for massage? I haven't done one now probably in 3 or 4 years. The last time I think the lowest end was somebody that said they lived in a real rural area and they were doing massage for like $40
Wow.
in their home. $40 in their home was licensed there. The highest thing was somebody in New York who was charging $180 an hour. Now, that was several years ago, probably no more than 3 or 4. So the cost of massage, one thing that I find is that, people do hesitate to go up on their prices. Now, I've always advised people, if you're going to raise your prices, give a couple of months notice about that. And especially to your faithful clients. When I was in the place that I go to get pedicures the other day, this is what, July the 14th, she had a sign hanging up in there that says, effective August 25th, we will be raising our prices, and had the new price list. And so I thought, Yeah, that's good. 6 to 8 weeks of notice to people that this is going to happen. Also, see what the market's going to bear, because if you're charging $150 an hour while everybody else is charging $90 an hour in your area, then there needs to be a good reason for that. Do you just think you're all that in a bag of chips? And is that why you're charging 150 an hour, or is it because everybody else has a little office, and that's not in the affluent area of the county, and yours is right outside the gate of a gated community or whatever? I mean, a big resort area. So um, charge whatever you want to, but another trend that I've seen is people expecting tips. I get so many people that ask me, how do I let my clients know I want a tip? And I go, you don't. You charge whatever it is, whatever amount of money it is you really want, and then you do that. Now, if you're in a franchise, I know that the receptionist there, I think the general thing is to give people an envelope or something like that. They kind of let it be known there that tips are expected. The other thing I'll say is the massage championships. I have avoided saying anything about those because I know a lot of people who are participating in them. I've been asked to be a judge in 3 different states, and I just said no. I know too many people. I wouldn't want anybody to accuse me of being biased against this one or that one because I knew them or whatever. But it has been important to me my whole massage career for us to be respected by the medical community and be thought of as part of the medical team. And all I can say is, I'm sure there are people with their heart in the right place, but I don't see any doctors out here having a contest to see who can take out your gallbladder the fastest or who's theatrical. And there are, from the videos that I've watched, there are a lot of theatrics. But there are also a lot of teachers that I know and respect who are being judges at these things. So I just say to each his own, and I'm not going to criticize it, but I'm not going to participate in it at the same time. Whatever floats your boat. One of the teachers that I know that used to be against it when it first started has now changed his opinion to, well, it really gets people talking about massage. If nothing else, it brings massage to the conversation. A lot of therapists have said that they really enjoy seeing everybody else's techniques and everything. And so my thought on it is then have an exhibition. Don't make it a contest between therapists of, oh, I'm a better massage therapist than you.
Yeah.
Because I could get a massage from somebody and think, well, they don't know Jack. You might get a massage from the same person and think, God, that was the best massage I've ever had. So I don't really see how people walking around judging exactly can decide who is the best massage therapist. They may decide who has the best body mechanics or something of that nature. But I just say different strokes for different folks.
Sure. I'm wondering, just because you bring it up, to me, I always try to put things into a historical context, especially in these interviews. And I'm wondering, I'm hearing similarities between kind of the discussion when the franchises kind of really showed up. A lot of people kind of had hesitations, reservations about the franchise model. And then they've also, in more recent years, conversations moved towards, well, it gets people in the door or an introduction to massage therapy. And I'm wondering if we'll have similar feelings about the championships later on.
I don't know, but you know something? I mean, massage franchises are a very good place for folks who are straight out of massage school to go get experience under their belt. And not everybody is cut out to be in business for themselves.
Right.
Now, you know what? I had years there when I was running my massage clinic. A lot of my therapists sometimes made more money than I did because I'm the one with all the overhead. My name is down there to pay the utilities, pay the phone bill, pay for the advertising, pay for this and pay for that. It's not all it's cracked up to be. It was the same thing when I was in the restaurants. I have been over a restaurant that had 80 employees. And so, it can consume you. So at this point in my life, if I was inclined to go out and get a job, my town's too small to have a massage envy or a hand and stone. But at this point in my life, if I was inclined to get a job like that, I might go to one myself, because you do your work and you walk out the door. You're not taking it home with you, you know? So I know people that work at franchises, including, are you still working at a franchise? You are, aren't you?
Yeah, I absolutely am.
And you're happy working there. So I say to people, you know, you do what makes you happy. And if it's a franchise, or if it's some ritzy ditzy spa where they're charging $200 an hour for massage and giving you $40 out of it, you'd be just as well off at one of the franchises. I think I know people that work there that are very happy. I know people that work there that are dissatisfied for one reason or another, or they've stayed there past the time that they were, you know. Sometimes you get burned out on a job, and I mean, it doesn't matter what it is or how nice the owner is or whatever. It just comes a time for you to go. And some people will leave and decide that it's meant for them to go into business for themselves or whatever. It's fine. I think there's room for everybody. I think there's room for massage franchises. And yes, a lot of people do use them as a jumping off point, but that's fine. They knew that going into it. Then there's people like you that hang around for a long time. That's the truth. And so Nathan Nordstrom, you know, he's been a massage therapist. He's been the president of National AMTA. He's judging massage championships. He was in Denmark last week judging that world thing. There are some very fine people associated with the franchises. So I'm not in judgment of that. I think there's plenty of room for them, and I think there's plenty of room for the people who want to be out on their own.
Do you have a collection of massage history? Because you've been, kind of on the pulse of what's been happening over your career. And I know I will kick myself in the pants if I don't ask you this specific question about your blog, because you've talked to me outside of this interview about your blog. And yeah, just share with me where you think history, and in particular that blog, and um, yeah, in a historical context.
Well, I have recently, very recently, earlier this year, started blogging again about the politics of massage.
Yeah.
I cannot even remember what year I first started doing that, but I believe it was Massage Magazine that asked me to blog on their website, and I started there, and then Massage Today, myself and Angie Patrick and maybe Irene Diamond, some other teachers. It was something like a women in the bodywork business kind of thing. I wrote a separate, different blog for that, not the massage politics blog, but my massage politics. It ended up that Oakworks. I don't know who else. There was a bunch of places that wanted my blog, and I finally went, look, this is going on my website. Share it all you want. So that's what I've been doing. And recently I used to do a series periodically about the financial health of massage organizations. So in this particular series, I just posted one the other day that's about the financial health of the Federation of State Massage Therapy Boards. I had previously done one that was about the financial health of AMTA, and I have been writing earlier this year. The reason I decided to start this blog back was because the therapists from California contacted me. And so I've had quite a bit to say about the California Massage Therapy Council. California is one of the few states that has voluntary certification. So I've been blogging about them because of a few ruckuses that have come up. But yeah, I have seen things. I've seen things change over the years. I have not always been directly involved in those changes. I've done my share of volunteer work when I was a member at AMTA, which was the first, I don't know how many years of my career, but back then I was a unit coordinator. North Carolina, big wide state, so they divided it up into 6 units, and each unit would have their own continuing education. Then they created a job called unit coordinator administrator, and I was the first one in that position, which I had ultimate responsibility for all of the state units, keeping up with what they were doing and where they were doing it and all that. Then I have, during my time on the North Carolina Board of Massage, that is, of course, a volunteer position, doesn't pay anything. I also was a delegate to the Federation of State Massage Therapy Boards twice while I was on our board. And now I am a volunteer for the Federation. I have been on their exam question writing committee. I'm not on that anymore. I also was one of the founding members of the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education, and I was involved in that for quite a few years, and then I left it for a time, but I am back there now. I came back last year. I'm on the Teacher Resource Development Committee. We have kind of divided that up among the volunteers. I actually came back because I was invited specifically by Susan Salvo and Christy to get involved in that again and help them with getting, their list of teacher resources had gotten outdated and that kind of thing. And so I'm volunteering with them, uh, and that's how it goes. So I have always kind of kept my finger on the pulse. I did stop when I stopped blogging. It was in 2015 while my previous husband was very sick. And, people don't realize that I used to spend 20 hours a week researching a blog before I put it out there because I was often calling out bad behavior by some of our organizations. And I wasn't taking one person's word for that. I wasn't going to write a blog just because, well, so and so said the national board wasn't fair to me or whatever. I always research that thoroughly before I put it out there. So in the history of massage, I said earlier that nobody had more artifacts or anything than what Judy Calvert has had. She has, over the years, she has sent me some little newspaper clippings from an old newspaper advertising massage or something like that, and I've got things in my scrapbook. But yeah, I've seen changes. When I started, I can't remember what year Massage Envy started, but I don't think there was any franchises when I first got started, or if there were, you know, they weren't well known yet. I don't think there were any massage championships when I got started. And social media certainly was not what it is now when I got started. I see massage therapists every day, who are on TikTok promoting their business. And sometimes when I go on, I spend more time looking at TikTok than I do making content for it. But sometimes I talk about massage and sometimes I just talk about something else like the floods that happened last week or something. But yeah, I've seen the environment change. I've seen, there have been several states that got licensure in after I first got licensed, and some of them are easier to get licensed in than others. We have a former national president of AMTA whose son got transferred to Alaska a few years back. He's in the military, and she has been licensed in North Carolina and in Florida, for years and years, and she couldn't get a license in Alaska without jumping through a whole lot of hoops and taking more education. And I'm going, this woman's been the national president. For God's sake, she's been a massage therapist for 40 years. So those are things that I've seen change.
I could fall into a rabbit hole very easily. I'm going to sidestep it for the sake of our time. Laura, what are you most proud of when you look back?
What am I most proud of? That's a hard call, Well, it is. It's a hard call. I am proud to be a member of a community that, in a lot of ways, feels like a big family.
Mm.
I've always called the World Massage Festival. I've always referred to that as the family of hands. And I guess it's because I've gone to that convention for so many years, but wherever else I go, whether it's, down to Florida or Arkansas, when I came to Arkansas and going to all the AMTA chapters, I almost always see people that I know
Mm.
because I've been going around for so long. And a lot of these folks are, followers on social media or friends on social media. And so I usually make an announcement before I go somewhere that if I run into you at a convention, please tell me your name and don't depend on me to know you by your profile picture. And if your profile picture is your cat, that goes double.
Exactly.
But it's people, the people that's just part of a community. There is not any room for professional jealousy And I've seen very little of that over the years. Every once in a while, when it rears its ugly head, I'll call people out and I'll just say, look, there's enough aching bodies to go around. Don't be jealous of somebody else. So I'm proud of the fact that I've gotten to travel to so many places. Proud of the fact that I've got quite a few books under my belt now, and a whole bunch of magazine articles. I'm gonna borrow a turn of phrase from a massage school director I used to know down in Georgia. His name was Bobby Lewis. He would always say, like Minnie Pearl, I'm just so proud to be here. I know there's people I'm watching this that don't have the slightest idea who cousin Minnie Pearl was, but she used to be on the Grand Ole Opry, and that was her opening line. I'm just so proud to be here.
Uh,
I
I,
don't have any plans to retire yet. I'll keep going as long as I can.
thank goodness for that, Laura. I can't speak for the whole profession, but I'm proud that you're here too.
Well, I want to say, Kirby, if I can blow your horn for just a minute, I'm proud of you too, because I've been around a long time. I haven't been around as long as Sandy Fritz. There are other people out there that I haven't been around as long as they have. Michael McGillicuddy, there's a lot of school owners and teachers out there who are in their 70s and they're still rocking and still running their schools and still writing books and still doing what they do, still working on clients. But when it comes to volunteerism and to doing something to advance the cause of massage, you're the future. You are the future. I have been very happy I can't even remember why you came on my radar. I don't remember. I honestly don't remember, but I don't know whether I saw you on TikTok or whether I saw you on Facebook or what. But you're the future because you're doing something. The Society of Massage Archives, that's a good thing, because people do need to know, where they came from and what's happened. And I'll be glad to write an occasional article for y'all or something if you would like one. About the history, because Hippocrates said the physician must be experienced at rubbing.
Yeah.
I mean, that how many thousands of years old is that? Been quite some time. So massage has been with us for a long time, and hopefully it'll be with us for a long time more. But we do need more, younger people like yourself. I'm on Social Security now. I don't get to qualify as a spring chicken anymore. We do need younger people such as yourself that are willing to stand up, take on roles of importance, and do things to advance massage therapy. So I applaud you, because I've been watching you now for several years, and I'm proud of what you do. So
I'm thankful you've only been watching me for a few years, because the years that you might not be as proud of. But thank you. And yeah, I believe I'm just doing what I believe is right. The Society of Massage Archives, I'm not working alone, thankfully, and it's just we really believe that we're filling a need that has been there for too long in our estimation. So I appreciate that, and we most certainly will take you up on. We are always inviting writers for our newsletter.
Julie has been here for years in massage therapy, and she has seen a lot of changes come and go. One of your other office, Jeffrey Montoya.
Yeah.
I have taught a class wherever Jeffrey was. I can't remember where all these people are from, but I taught a class that he had brought his group of massage students to one time. It was an AMTA thing, I'm sure. But yeah, we need the younger blood to come in and be ready to step up to the plate, carry the torch, on and on.
Absolutely. Is there anything we haven't talked about that we should cover before we get out of here, or anything I haven't asked that I should have?
No, I just want to give one piece of advice to all the massage therapists out there. I said at the beginning of this podcast that, I get my regular massage. When I'm teaching a class, I can ask for a show of hands of how many people have had a massage in the last month, how many people have had a massage in the last year. How can you be in integrity and tell your clients that they need to get massage every month or every 2 weeks or whatever it is, that you're telling them, if you're not doing it yourself? You have got to take care of yourself. I'm telling you, I would have already quit moving if it wasn't for massage. I'd be sitting here like a rock somewhere, unable to move, if it wasn't for massage therapy. So take care of yourselves, folks, so that you're able to continue working, and so that you're able to do good works like Kirby's doing here. Okay,
It's good
that's good.
advice. If you could record any deceased person's account of massage history, who would you choose to have a conversation with?
Oh my, probably Ada Rolf.
Okay.
Now there are some recordings of her in the archives on the Rolf Institute's website. But what a fascinating person. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. I don't know. Among the deceased, I'd say she'd probably be at the top of my list.
Idaroff is a great person to choose for that.
Yes,
Moving into the land of the living, so to speak, who would you choose? Who should we talk to in one of these interviews next?
I'm sure you've already talked to Sandy, haven't you? Sandy Fritz. Let me think here. Well, mm-mm-mm. You might consider. Oh my goodness, there's so many that I admire. I don't want to say one and not mention another. That's very true. That's very true. Someone that I know that has, had a very long and very successful career. Have you talked to Mike McGillicuddy yet?
We haven't.
Well, Michael has been a massage therapist. I have no idea how many years, and he's had a school for many, many years. And I would think he would be a good one to interview because he has seen a lot of things come and go. He's seen a lot of changes.
It's a name that I hear every once in a while, and it's a name that I come across on social media here and there. So yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Michael is in Florida. Another person was one of the people that I co authored a book with. His name is Dorel Lakatos, and Dorel came here from Romania.
Hmm.
And his first night in America, he slept under the Brooklyn Bridge.
Wow.
And he has a very successful massage school up in Pennsylvania. He's just an all around nice guy. He approached me a few years ago about writing a book with him for teachers, and I did that. So his story is fascinating.
Right. Look in, see if we can get a conversation with the two of them. Last thing, Laura, before we get out of here, how can listeners or viewers get in contact with you?
My email is educatedheart@gmail.com, and my website is lauraallenmt.com. Now, I'm on all kinds of social media. On most places, I am Laura Allen MT. My personal Facebook is Laura Allen Clayton. And I have a notice on there. There's hundreds and hundreds of massage therapists on my personal page. And they're welcome to be there. But if you hit that page, you're going to be seeing pictures of my dog and listening to my music. So if you only want to see massage related posts, then go to Laura Allen MT.
Well, I especially want to extend my gratitude for you going over. Here we are, another half hour than you expected. So I appreciate your time so much, Laura. And I learned a lot about you through this interview. And it's just been great to reconnect with you because I find you just a joy to be around.
I appreciate you having me, Kirby, and it was good to see you. I hope we run into each other somewhere in person.
Before too much longer, right?
Again, yeah, again. I think next year the World Massage Festival is going to be back in Cherokee, North Carolina. And then I saw an announcement yesterday, I think, that in 2027, it's going to be on a cruise ship.
Oh, they're
I
doing
don't know if I want to get on a cruise ship or not. Probably not.
scarier things are happening on cruise ships lately.
Well, we had the World Massage Festival years ago on board the Queen Mary, which is, docked in wherever it is, San Diego or wherever it is. We had it there, and what a lovely old boat. And strangely, a friend of mine who is deceased now, but he lived out there, and he actually used to work on board the Queen Mary. So while I was teaching, they gave him a pass because he had worked there for so many years, and he got to take my husband in the engine room and all over the boat and all kind of stuff, and give him a big tour while I was teaching classes. But it was fun. It was a fun trip.
Yeah, I bet. So that might be one worth looking into if you can brave the seas, right?
That's right. That's right.
Well, thank you again, Laura. This has been a delight to me.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, Kirby. I'll talk to you soon.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to the Society of Massage Archives. so we can continue to bring you this episode and other resources to fulfill our mission of preserving and integrating the historical knowledge of massage therapy's professional advocacy and traditional techniques to guide and enrich our contemporary practices. Thank you. You have been listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives. You can learn more about the Society at societyofmassagearchives.org. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know someone whose hands have helped shape the practice of massage? If you or someone you know would make a great guest for future episodes of this podcast, please email the Society at societyofmassagearchives@gmail.com. Society of Massage Archives, all one word, @gmail.com.